The only thing most people know about St Soupage is that he is commemorated on the 4th day after Christmas, when all the leftovers from the feasting are boiled together to make a tasty broth, which is then traditionally placed in the freezer until July the 1st, at which point it has turned into a sort of greyish sludge, which is then thrown away on St Soupage's minor day. But who was St Soupage, and what do we know of his life and times? And more to the point, why is he remembered in such an odd way? My name's Peter John Cooper, and this is another one of my 10-minute tales. Today's tale is taken from my well-thumbed copy of the Boys and Girls Bumper Book of Early Christian Churchmen, and is the story of St Soupage. One of the first written references to St Soupage is in the poem by the 15th century French writer François Villon. If you are anything of a fan of French poetry, you will know the line, "Où sont les soupages d'antan?" And although this was written many centuries after his death, it contains a hefty hint as to his supposed character. Soupage, as I'm sure you're aware, has the principal meaning of broth, but also contains an inference of practical joke. Soupage was born in the 4th century AD in what is now southern Turkey, and rose to be a bishop in the early Christian church. We know something of that because of his feud with the bishop of a city a little further along the coast. This was Bishop Nicholas, who was later to be canonised as Saint Nicholas of Myra. Although most of the extant records call it a feud, modern historians think of it more as a series of annoying practical jokes aimed by the Bishop Soupage at the notoriously straight-laced Bishop Nicholas. We all know that Saint Nicholas was given to leaving presents of gold coins in the socks of unsuspecting children. These acts of charity gave rise to our tradition today of giving socks to all our relatives at Christmas. The people of the city began to celebrate Nicholas as a man of great piety, even though he publicly disavowed this. But he may well have accidentally let the truth slip out as the communion wine flowed at a convocation the Bishop Soupage was also attending. Later commentators agree that Soupage himself was acting out of holy piety by challenging any proudful tendencies in Nicholas, or perhaps he was just a bit of a wag. Whatever the case, it is reported that he wagered his congregation that he was the more pious, and he then set out to prove it. But as he said in private, he was merely carrying out God's command to give the pious old humbug a bit of a kicking. In a satiric retaliation to Nicholas's habit of leaving gifts in socks, Soupage started entering houses at night, leaving gold coins wrapped in pairs of underpants. The people of the city, however, began attributing this bounty to Nicholas as well. Nicholas was somewhat shocked by this turn of events and privately began to believe that he really must be so holy that an angel was carrying out his difficult and somewhat expensive work on his behalf. Soupage chuckled gleefully to himself, and in a rather heavy-handed gesture he took to wearing a pair of underpants on his head in place of a mitre every time he visited Nicholas's palace. The people of the city took this to be a sign of Bishop Soupage's eccentricity and applauded his sense of humour as making a change from the pious old Nicholas. Of course, Nicholas realised the meaning of this gesture, but he kept his frustration and disappointment to himself, even though it must have festered. Well, this act in turn has given that other hilarious Christmas tradition that whenever we receive undergarments for Christmas, we are expected to wear them on our heads. Now for Soupage's final gag. Part of the trope that had been spun around Bishop Nicholas's piety was that he carried out his charity in great secrecy and gained access to these targets' houses by climbing down their chimneys at dead of night. Soupage considered this to be an outrageous piece of self-promotion. Nicholas was a man of considerable bulk and could not possibly have operated in this way. So every time he was in the neighbourhood, Soupage took to smearing his bottom with soot and gyrating it in the direction of Nicholas's palace. Again, Nicholas must have realised the significance of this. Then, one day, when Nicholas was in the palace garden clearing snow from the path, Soupage chanced by and offered to make a wager as to which house would next be visited. Nicholas saw this opportunity to get even and accepted the wager, saying that the one place that would never be visited would be the dyer's house. Soupage took the bait and accepted the bet, so that the next night saw him on the roof of the dyer's house, placing first one leg and then the other into the chimney, coins and underpants at the ready. The trap was complete. What Nicholas knew was that the dyer was making a vat of Myra's internationally famed rose madder dye. We assumed that he meant no real harm, but just intended that Soupage would come out of it with rather more than a red face, and so apologise. But alas, Soupage did not make his attempt until late at night. And by now the dye was boiling furiously, and when the good bishop slipped down the chimney, straight into the bubbling cauldron. Nicholas had been sitting up in anticipation, and as soon as he heard the commotion, he dashed across the snow-filled square to the dyer's house. But what met his eyes was not a prelate red with embarrassment, but Soupage, boiled alive and looking rather more like a cooked lobster. In a desperate attempt to revive Soupage, they dragged him out and rolled him in the snow, where he quickly froze into a block of ice. In shock, Nicholas fell to his knees and began praying for forgiveness. Southern Turkey is known for its bitter winters, so Soupage remained frozen into his block of ice until the end of June, with Nicholas never leaving his side. And then at last the ice thawed, and Bishop Soupage stepped out, smiling and laughing, and helped Nicholas from his knees. Everyone agreed it was a miracle. But the church could never decide whether this was the result of Nicholas's prayers or by Soupage's own extreme, if rather jocular, piety. We assume the latter because Soupage seems to have won both the wager with Nicholas and with his congregation, and died a wealthy and happy old man. Whatever the truth or otherwise of this story, in the centuries to come, they were both canonized, and we come to remember them both as making the case for Turkey at Christmas. Where indeed are the soupage of yesteryear. Well, thank you for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because there will be another 10-minute tale next week. So thanks for now and goodbye.